All right. So we had three breakout room conversation topics on the table. What is the thesis of each poem? What is the benefit of presenting this thesis as a poem juxtaposed to a essay? And then finally, what is your favorite reading? Excuse me. What is your favorite reading from the semester? And what did this course teach you about yourself? So those are the three conversation topics on the table. Who would like to discuss what was talked about in your breakout rooms?
Well, my group, well, to discuss the second question, where choosing to present the idea in the form of a poem over an essay, I believe when you have a poem, you are allowed to have more abstract ideas, and that can allow you to have more just power behind the words because there's emotion, there's feeling, there's creativity, there's comparisons. You're juxtaposing different ideas in the form of a poem, and it allows you to hit harder in certain areas, especially emotionally, versus an essay, which you still can do those things, but it's in a much more listed out way that's kind of, presented to you as an argument versus as this kind of artistic, um, like putting my mind into an artistic form and on putting it on paper and presenting it to you.
Thank you, Ken. That's a great call out. Who else would like to discuss either the thesis of each poem or what their favorite reading was and what the semester taught them about themselves?
Well, I could say my favorite reading of the semester was Going to Meet the Man, Baldwin.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I don't know, it kind of really shocked me a little bit, and the ending of it, like how he was lynched, like I was not expecting that, and it kind of like brightened my understanding of like the idea of lynching and what was going on during that time, and it made me learn more about like how like what Black people had to go through like back in the day, like it was really brutal.
Yeah. Brianna, what did the semester teach you about yourself?
Oh well, the semester overall, I remember well, kind of my religion, basically Christianity. It gave me a new idea of like God, how He tests humanity, and I really never thought about it before coming to this class, and it really like brightened my knowledge of it. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Brianna.
Uh,
Go ahead.
my bad. To answer that question as well, I actually did learn a lot from this class over the semester. So much as like the principles of my art, like I didn't really know about that before. I've heard something similar to it, but I actually do apply that to my everyday life more often, and being in balance and peace. And then also that lesson that you had for us, where to take off the kind of mask that we wear, being minorities or people, and going to different people talking differently because around them, and just being able to be aware enough to turn that off, and you kind of just self-reflecting in there.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Anyone else want to share? We also have the thesis of the two poems. Gisela, what did your group talk about?
My group talked about, I was with, he just said it about the thesis of the poem, of each poem, or just like or any question.
Yeah, whichever one you want to talk about. It's up to you.
Well, my favorite reading was about, it was the first one. I think it was the rules or like, it was kind of like the Ten Commandments,
Yeah,
but
the
not,
teaching of Ptahhotep.
yeah, the teachings of Ptahhotep. And it really like, brightened or like made me just realize things in my everyday life and how I should, like, how I should move, I guess. And yeah, but that was my favorite reading.
Okay, thank you. Let's get one more before we transition over. Who else wants to talk about what was discussed in your breakout rooms?
Could I talk about like a thesis of one of the poems?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so for the poem Black Love Supreme, I felt like the thesis was kind of the author was trying to express like a desire for someone like the love of their life to denounce these ideas of like double consciousness and Du Bois like two world thesis type like idea,
Mhm.
and to kind of return to like their African roots and to realize that they have these things that are important to them, like for example, he used the example of like religion and everything. And I thought it was really cool how in his metaphor for like how his love was created in beauty by a god, he used a West African god rather than the Christian god, which in itself is denouncing the two world thesis. So I just thought that was really cool.
Thank you, Lynette. Great, very insightful read on that particular poem. Okay, so what I want to do is kind of out of the normal flow of things, but I want to get this out the way. Who has not done their 2 fishbowls for the semester? Because I want to get that done now, and then we'll go into my notes, and then we'll go into talking about your final presentations. But again, this is the last opportunity to get your participation points for your fishbowl. So if you have not done 2 fishbowls, please take the opportunity to do so now, because if not, I'm just going to move forward with the course. So does anyone need to fishbowl?
I believe I need to go.
Okay. So Karina, we'll have you do the fishbowl. Again, you can talk about anything. You can talk about the poems. You can talk about the breakout room. You can talk about whatever you see fit. Okay.
Okay.
We're ready when you are.
I just want to share my favorite reading, which was Going to Meet the Man. It had to be my favorite reading because it really opened my eyes and it helped me get a better understanding of what Black people had to go through, and it helped me expand my knowledge.
And then Karina, what did this semester teach you about yourself?
What helped me like see things differently.
Like how? Go a little bit deeper for me.
Um, well, to be like completely honest, before joining this course, I wasn't really like, I didn't understand like the history of Black people and what they had to go through, and like the readings really helped me like get a better understanding, and yeah.
Okay. What I want to do before we end, I want to circle back to you, Karina, because I want to know, like, what did you learn about yourself, right? So what did these months in this class teach Karina about Karina? I'm gonna give you the rest of the class to kind of think about that.
Okay.
But that's what I really want to get to know from you all is what did you learn about yourself from the time spent in this course? But so let's move on to our to my notes, if you will, for this particular reading. How many of you all got a chance to watch the video that was added to this week's material? Show of hands, or give me a head nod or something. Let me know who's seen it. Okay. Yeah, so let me do this. We'll play that video first, and then for those who've read the shorter poem, hopefully this will make a little bit more sense to you. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Rohan. All right.
Tenía 7 años apenas 7 años. ¿Qué 7 años? No llegaba a 5 siquiera. De pronto unas voces en la calle me gritaron: ¡Negra! 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 ¿Soy acaso negra?, me dije. ¡Sí! ¿Qué cosa es ser negra? ¡Negra! Yo no sabía la triste verdad que aquello escondía. ¡Negra! Y me sentí negra. ¡Negra! Como ellos decían. ¡Negra! Y retrocedí. ¡Negra! Como ellos querían. ¡Negra! Yo odié mis cabellos y mis labios gruesos y miré apenada mi carne tostada y retrocedí. ¡Negra! Y retrocedí. ¡Negra! 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 Pasaba el tiempo y siempre amargada. Seguía llevando a mi espalda mi pesada carga. Y cómo pesaba. me alacé el cabello, me polvé la cara, y entre mis entrañas siempre resonaba la misma palabra. ¡Negra, negra, 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 negra! Hasta que un día que retrocedía y que iba a caer. ¡Negra, negra, 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 negra! ¿Qué? ¿Y qué? Negra, sí, negra soy, negra, negra soy, negra, sí, negra soy, negra, negra soy. Yo en adelante no quiero laciar mi cabello, no quiero, y voy a reírme de aquellos que por evitar, según ellos, que por evitarnos algún sinsabor llaman a los negros gente de color. ¿Y de qué color? ¡Negro! ¿Y qué lindo suena? ¡Negro! ¿Y qué ritmo tiene? ¡Negro, negro, 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 negro! Al fin comprendí. Al fin, ya no retrocedo. Al fin, y avanzo segura. Al fin, avanzo y espero. Al fin, y bendigo al cielo porque quiso Dios que negro azabache fuese mi color y ya comprendí. Al fin, ya tengo la llave. Negro, 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 negro.
All right, so that is the poem by Victoria Santa Cruz that Fred Moten, who wrote the shorter poem in the book entitled All That Beauty, which is a collection of poems and poetics. But the video that you just watched inspired the poem that he wrote. So for those who read the Fred Moten poem, the shorter one, that starts off with "They yelled at me," does that allow the poem to make a little bit more sense for you? Yes, no, kind of. Okay, let me rephrase that. How many of you all read the Fred Moten poem? Okay, Rohan did. So Rohan, since you've read that and now that you've seen the video, what's your experience with the poem now upon seeing the video?
My initial thoughts are that she's like proud to be black, even though people try to convince her otherwise. Which, I mean, the poem already told me that, just verbally, just through language. But I think the video does a good job of kind of humanizing it.
Yeah, and I think also Rohan, it's the she doesn't start off being proud to be black, right? Like there's something that she had as an evolution that she had to come to that realization. Also, not only the realization of being proud to be black, but being comfortable with her black features, right? Not needing to put powder on her nose anymore, not needing to straighten her hair anymore, and just taking pride in that. This is really reflective of the era that we left off with our readings, as far as the Black Power era, the late 60s, the early 70s, the early to mid 70s, right? Where there's a shift that takes place within Black consciousness. Not only from a political standpoint are they becoming more politically aware of things of like Black Power, Black nationalism, but culturally and aesthetically, they're starting to change the way that Black people present themselves, right? By and large, there's no more people wearing the conks, was what they called them, or perming their hair to make their hair look white, right? They're rocking their hair in afros. You see a lot more African people wearing African garb. The dashiki becomes very popular. So this poem picks up on a time where Black people are becoming more proud, more emboldened, more comfortable with their look, their Africanity, and the features that make them look so. Also, for me, what I found interesting, especially hearing the video, Victoria Santa Cruz's portion of the poem, you have someone talking about Black issues, right? But they're doing it in Spanish. So for those who just watched the video, what does the Spanish language do to your? I want to say, for lack of a better word, how does that complicate the way that you understand the poem? What does that do to problematize your understanding of the poem, hearing that it originated from somebody speaking in Spanish?
Personally, it made it more relatable to me growing up in a Hispanic household, as like me and my brothers being the only one of our like the only people out of our cousins that were like Black because of our dad, you know. And it just, I don't know, it just made it feel more personal. And like colorism's like such a big issue in like Latin America, and it's not talked about enough, as like many racial issues aren't. And so yeah, I think there's just like a part in the poem, the written poem, where she says she just says soy, like, and it's italicized. It's the first time that she speaks Spanish in the poem, and just reading that left like more of a lasting impact, because that like one word in Spanish encapsulates a phrase of saying I am. Like giving yourself that identity through one word is just like really powerful.
Yeah. That's a very good call, and I think you really hit it on the head, Lynette, in the sense of twofold, right? One, talking about something that's often not discussed in the Latin American community, the colorism that exists there, right? Um, and then two, within that, there's a colorism there because that there are Black people in Latin America, right? There are Black people in these Spanish-speaking countries. Um, in fact, Brazil, right? Although it's not a Spanish-speaking country because of Portuguese colonialism, Brazil is the second largest concentration of African people in the world outside of Africa, right? So is Africa having the largest amount of African people, followed directly by Brazil, right? So this notion of one, Black folks is everywhere, right? But this notion of Black people not having a presence in Central and South America, this poem disturbs that notion. There's also a very good docuseries, and I forget the name of the docuseries right now, but it's a PBS docuseries, and it's done by Henry Louis Gates. And what he's doing is he's exploring the African presence in Central and South America. And what he finds is oftentimes a lot of these great, what I'll say Hispanic figures, are oftentimes were originally African, but because of the colorism and because of the anti-Blackness in Southern and Central and South America, they present these individuals and these characters as white, as European, or as very light-skinned, right? So I think Moten's work does a good job of kind of bringing these things to surface that kind of get effaced. Anyone else want to comment on this particular poem or the video that we just watched? Okay. Let's transition to the second poem, the longer one, the Black Love Supreme poem. What would you say is the thesis of this particular poem? What is the author up to with this one? No one? What's the thesis? What's the overall argument of the Black Love Supreme poem?
That I am proud that I am Black.
Yeah, I think there's definitely hints of that in the poem. For me, there's a movement that takes place in the poem, right? And the author kind of situates it originally like a love letter, right? It's addressed to the love of their life. And it really starts off talking about, the beauty of the individual, right? But then there's a shift that takes place. And I think the shift takes place on the second paragraph where it says, "But I've been watching for a while now, and I see you wipe the tears." Right? That's where, to me, that's where I would signify that shift. And it kind of takes a little darker theme to it, I would suppose. But then it also deals with this concept of the two worlds, right? working through the work of Du Bois. We didn't engage that in this course, but when you think about the two worlds, think about the code switching assignment that we had done earlier in the semester, where I'm asking you to be yourself as you go into that other world. This is kind of situated within that, as he talks about, or as the author invokes Du Bois. Um, there's also elements of a religiosity, or as Lynette, I think it was Lynette, a critique of religious institutions and Western religious institutions in there. And then also it's elements of self defense, if you will, right? Like of a response to a brutality. And I think that's the way that the text ends. He kind of responds to that brutality, or the author responds to that version of brutality there, in the sense that when he puts the knee on your neck, he will know I have been watching, right? And to me, that symbolizes a response to the brutality, or a self-defense to the brutality. What are some other thoughts that you all have about this particular poem? No thoughts? Who read this poem? If nobody read it, we don't have to spend time with it. So nobody read this poem? Are y'all there?
Yeah, I just kind of skimmed through it, to be honest.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I read it.
But you already talked on that, so I'm not gonna unburden you. But no worries. All right, so let's do this. Let's transition into our talking about our final projects. 1 second here. Pull this up. Okay. So for your final projects, here's some. These are things that have to be done, right? These are like not non-negotiables. You have anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes to present your information. 7 minutes at the most, so nothing more than 7 minutes. In your presentation, you have to have a thesis, you have to have an analysis, you have to have a contemporary analysis, and you have to have questions. Now, your questions could be questions that you're posing to the audience, right? Or it could be just questions that will provoke a course conversation. So again, a thesis. So what is the song's thesis? What is your analysis of the song? What is the contemporary analysis of the song? And questions surrounding the song, whether they're questions that you pose to your audience or questions that will lead into a course conversation. Those are the criteria that has to be placed within your presentation. Now, how you do the presentation is totally up to you. I don't care how you do it. You could do a podcast. You could do a PowerPoint presentation. You could do a poem. You could do a song. You could do a video. How you do it, I don't care. As long as you have those 4 components, and long as that presentation does not go above 7 minutes. What questions do you all have for me pertaining to the final presentation?
How will it be submitted through Google Classroom?
No, you're gonna present the presentation, right? So the day of our final, I don't know what day that is off the top of my head, excuse me, but I'll email you all no later than Thursday to let you know when our final will be for this course. On that day, whatever group is up first, I'll give them control of the Zoom. They will be able to share their screen and they'll present their project to the course. Does that answer your question, Rohan?
Wait, so we're doing it in groups?
Yes. So Kine, actually, let me do this just to kind of be clearer on answering your question. So this is your class. These should be how your groups have been sectioned out. So for Kendrick Lamar's song, we have Kyle, Jesse, James, Eric, and Carlos. For Nas Project Window, we have Jaden, Karina, Fabian, Anthony. For Tupac White Man's World, we have Tanaya, Gisela, JR, Brianna, and Andy. For Nina Simone's Four Women, we have Maria, Maribel, Monica, Lynette, and Margaret. And then for Rhapsody's Mara Lee, we have Kaylin, Taylor, Rohan, and David. So these are the groups. If you do not see your name on here, you should send me an email and I'll get you in a group. But you want to make sure that you've met with these group members as soon as possible because, again, you have little less than a week to get these presentations put together and be ready to present them. Any questions?
Yeah. Would I be able to email you or can I just talk to you about adding me to a group because I don't have a group?
Yeah. You just hang out after in the class real quick, and I'll place you in a group.
All right, sounds good.
So, Cedia, I did get your email. I just haven't responded back to it yet. If you want to put in the chat what song that you're looking for, and I could place you in that group. But again, make sure you get with your groups as soon as possible because the time is running short on your ability to cultivate that project. Also, on the day of your final will be also the day that you must turn in the remainder of your journal. So you'll have 4 more journal entries that you should add it on since the midterm. That will give you a complete journal submission. I will place another tab on Google Classroom for you to submit that journal, and then that will complete the assignments for our semester. Is there any other questions, comments, or concerns for me?
I have one question. For the journals, are we submitting all of them all over again, plus those 4, or just those 4?
You can just submit the remaining 4. It's totally up to you. I guess it depends on how you did your journal. If you can submit just the final 4, that's cool. If you need to submit the whole thing, that's cool too. As long as I see those remaining 4. Any other questions? All right. So I will email you no later than Thursday to find out to let you know when your final is. But you guys could go on your Get website to look at the time and day of your final. Just to kind of keep you aware. You don't have to wait for me on Thursday. But again, I cannot emphasize enough to get with your group and get this cracking because this is the majority of your grade, right? And another thing that I'm looking for is everyone in the group participates in the presentation. If that's not the case, then your grade will suffer, especially the person who did not participate. But the group's overall grade will suffer as well because part of it is to work together. Other than that, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, just shoot me an email, and if need be, we can set up a Zoom to answer those questions also. All right, y'all. Be well, stay healthy, stay wealthy, stay wise, get your water, get your sun, get your exercise. Peace.